All aboard for the Quilting Arts creative journey. I'm Vivica Hansen-Denegri, your travel guide for season 2800 of Quilting Arts. So grab your passport. We'll provide the ticket to creativity as we travel to out-of-the-way places and take the road less traveled when it comes to our quilting. Join me and a bevy of talented designers from all over as we take a creative journey right from our own studio. Today's show is about imagery and using people or things as the basis for our work. First up, Carol Kussmaul creates a collage composition. Then join Sue King for enhanced cyanotypes. Learn the difference between wet and dry cyanotypes and how to enhance them with free motion. All today on Quilting Arts. Our journey begins this season with a lesson on imagery. With me today is Carol Kussmaul. Welcome, Carol.
Thank you.
Looks like you're going to be talking about some beautiful techniques.
I am going to share how I compose portraits, although these processes can be used for landscape or still life. But my favorite is portraiture. So I'm going to start with a design wall, and I have here a piece of batting that's a little larger than my finished quilt will be. And I feel like it's important to design vertically.
Well,
because
that's how we see the quilts when they're done.
Right.
Yeah.
When it's finished and it's hanging in the Museum of Modern Art, that's how it's going to look. So, and it's also good that you can get back a distance and be able to see the whole overall.
Right. So we're starting
piece.
with backgrounds, right?
We are starting with a background.
Okay.
I like to, let me start with my palette.
Sure.
I use a lot of fabrics from thrift store clothing. I love to go on treasure hunts. And so I have selected only 2 colors because I use a lot of prints.
Right.
And I don't want chaos. So if I had a lot of pattern and a lot of color, it would just be too much.
Right, but you can use different values out of the same color as well.
So as you can see from my palette that I've selected pieces all the way from very, very light to very, very dark in both of my 2 colors.
Right, and you've done a cool and a warm.
Yes, I actually did do that.
Yes.
Because contrast is important.
It is.
So, and I also like to use irregular shapes, which is easy when you're cutting out a sleeve from a shirt or whatever. So,
so those pieces that I normally would have squared up, you're actually leaving there.
Right, right. I feel like I have an advantage because I use parts and pieces from clothing.
Of clothing, yeah. And I can actually see, like, that looks like a great piece of fabric that my dad might have had in pajamas.
Exactly.
Or, yeah, or even
pajamas.
He would have.
Or boxer shorts.
Right. Actually, yes.
So another thing I like to do when I'm laying out a background is, well, I always pin, and I try to pin in and out. I don't just jab it into the wall, because later I'm going to want to carry that whole thing somewhere and sew on the pieces. So I always pin in and then out.
So I see you're just sort of composing like you think you might want to put it. Sometimes it's overlapping. You're not necessarily butting things up together.
Exactly. And another thing to consider, especially if you have a sheer fabric like this, you can overlap and end up with another value.
Right, so you might want to have a transition to medium.
Right.
You know, because you're going from, it looks like you have a light source coming here.
Yes.
You're going from light to dark.
Yes.
And you could have a little medium there if you wanted some transparency.
Right.
Perfect.
Now,
so
I have a little hole. I haven't covered the whole batting yet, so I might want to patch with something that, this is part dark and part medium value. I try not to have equal parts light, medium, and dark, because then they battle for attention. I let one dominate, and here I've allowed the dark to dominate. So once you've covered your background, the next step is to think about what will be the biggest parts of your composition.
Like
and
of your foreground, you mean?
Well, for a portrait, it would be the head,
right,
the neck, and the shoulders. So that's what I'm going to put up next.